When did a school nurse become your worst enemy? The cafeteria smelled like burnt pizza and floor cleaner when I bit into the brownie. My best friend Nadia had brought them from home, her mom's famous triple chocolate recipe that everyone always begged for. I was halfway through chewing when my tongue started tingling. Not the good kind of tingle you get from sour candy, but this weird burning sensation that spread across my mouth like I just licked a battery. I swallowed and felt my throat get tight, like someone was slowly wrapping their hands around my neck and squeezing. Nadia was laughing about something our chemistry teacher had said earlier, but her voice sounded far away and muffled, like I was underwater. I tried to tell her something was wrong, but when I opened my mouth, no sound came out. Just this horrible wheezing noise that made the kids at the next table turn around and stare. My face felt hot and swollen. I touched my cheek and it was puffy, getting bigger by the second. Nadia stopped laughing when she saw me. Her eyes went wide and she grabbed my arm. "Caleb, your face. Oh my God, your face." I stood up so fast my chair crashed backward. Kids at nearby tables turned to look. Someone screamed. I stumbled toward the cafeteria exit, my legs feeling like they were made of wet cement. Every breath was getting harder, like trying to suck air through a coffee stirrer. The nurse's office. I need to get to the nurse's office. My EpiPen was there in the locked cabinet, right next to my emergency contact sheet, and the action plan my allergist had filled out. I'd never needed it before, but my mom made sure it was there just in case. Just in case turned out to be right now, and I was running out of time. The hallway tilted sideways as I stumbled toward the office. My vision was getting blurry around the edges. I could hear Nadia behind me yelling for help, her voice high and panicked. Other students were backing away as I passed, their faces twisted with fear or disgust at whatever mine looked like. I caught a glimpse of myself in the glass door of a classroom. My lips were twice their normal size and my eyes were swelling shut. Red hives were spreading down my neck. I looked like a monster, but I felt worse. My chest was so tight I could barely get any air. Each breath was a fight. The nurse's office door was just ahead. 20 more steps. 15. 10. I crashed through the door and immediately saw Nurse Gladwell sitting at her desk eating a sandwich. She looked up annoyed, like I'd interrupted her lunch break, which I guess I had. I tried to speak but could only make this horrible wheezing sound. I pointed at my face, at my throat, trying to show her what was happening. She set down her sandwich slowly, way too slowly, and looked me up and down with this expression I couldn't read. "What did you eat?" Her voice was cold, clinical. I tried to answer but couldn't form words anymore. My tongue felt like it was filling my entire mouth. "Walnut!" I finally managed to gasp out. "Brownie. Walnut brownie." She stood up and walked over to me, but she wasn't moving with any urgency. She was taking her time, like she was examining a bug under glass rather than a student having an allergic reaction. "Are you sure you're not just having an anxiety attack? You kids today get so worked up over nothing." My knees buckled and I grabbed the edge of her desk to stay standing. My EpiPen was in that locked cabinet on the wall. I could see it from where I was standing, just 15 feet away. I pointed at it desperately. "EpiPen," I wheezed. "Need. Now." Nurse Gladwell crossed her arms over her chest. "I don't think so. The last 3 times students claimed they needed emergency medication, it turned out to be panic attacks. 2 of them were faking for attention. I'm not going to overreact to some hives and heavy breathing, but I wasn't breathing heavy. I was barely breathing at all. Black spots were starting to dance across my vision. My legs gave out, and I collapsed onto the floor. The cold tile pressed against my cheek. From down here, I could see dust bunnies under her desk, and a wadded-up tissue that had missed the trash can. Weird the things you notice when you're dying. Gladwell's shoes appeared in my field of vision. She crouched down, and I thought finally, she's going to help. Instead, she put 2 fingers on my wrist, checking my pulse. Then she stood back up. "Your pulse is elevated but not dangerously so. This is classic anxiety. I'm going to call your parents to come pick you up. You can wait in here until they arrive." She walked back to her desk and picked up the phone. I tried to tell her this wasn't anxiety, that I was going into anaphylactic shock, that I needed epinephrine immediately, or I was going to die. But no words came out anymore. Just this awful gurgling sound as my airway continued to close. I could hear her on the phone with the front office asking them to call my emergency contact. Her voice sounded bored, not urgent at all, just annoyed that she had to deal with this during her lunch period. Then I heard Nadia's voice in the hallway outside, loud and frantic. "She's allergic to nuts. She's having an allergic reaction. Where's her EpiPen?" The door burst open, and Nadia ran in, followed by 3 other students from the cafeteria. They all started talking at once, telling Gladwell about the brownies, about my documented allergy, about how fast my face had swollen. Gladwell held up her hand. "Everyone out. This is a private medical situation." "But she needs epinephrine," Nadia screamed. "Look at her." Gladwell's face went hard. I said out, "All of you, unless you want detention for the rest of the week." The other students hesitated, but Nadia wouldn't move. She dropped to her knees next to me. "Caleb, can you hear me?" I tried to nod, but my head felt too heavy. My vision was tunneling now, everything getting darker except for Nadia's face right in front of mine. "Stay with me. Just stay with me." She turned to Gladwell. "Give him the EpiPen. Please. I'm watching him die right here." "You're being dramatic." Gladwell's voice was sharp. "I've been a nurse for 12 years. I know the difference between an allergic reaction and an anxiety attack. He's panicking and that's making his symptoms worse. The best thing you can do is calm down so he can calm down. Nadia pulled out her phone. I'm calling 911. Gladwell moved faster than I'd seen her move yet, crossing the room and snatching the phone out of Nadia's hand. You will do no such thing. I'm the medical professional here and I'm telling you this isn't an emergency. Now get out of my office. Someone behind Nadia, I think it was Marcus from my English class, spoke up. His lips are turning blue. That can't be normal. Gladwell glanced at me, and I saw something flicker across her face. Uncertainty, maybe, or the first hint that she might be wrong. But then her jaw set and she pointed at the door. Everyone out now or I'm writing you all up for insubordination. That word hung in the air. Insubordination. Like we were soldiers refusing orders instead of students trying to save someone's life. Nadia stood up slowly, her hands shaking. You're killing him. If he dies, everyone's going to know you stood there and did nothing. Out. Gladwell's voice was ice. Nadia backed toward the door, but stopped just outside in the hallway where Gladwell couldn't reach her. She started filming on her phone. If you won't save him, at least everyone's going to see what you did. 3 more students crowded around her, all of them pulling out their phones. Gladwell saw them and her face turned red. Stop that. Stop recording. Delete those videos right now. But they didn't stop. More students were gathering in the hallway now, word spreading through the school that something bad was happening. I could hear a teacher's voice asking what was going on. Someone said Caleb Fisher is having an allergic reaction and the nurse won't give him his EpiPen. The teacher's voice got louder, urgent now. Where's the EpiPen? Let me see him. Gladwell moved to block the door. This is my office and my patient. Everyone needs to back up and let me do my job. But you're not doing your job, the teacher said. I recognized the voice now. Mr. Kapoor from AP History. I could see his legs through the forest of student bodies. He was trying to push through the crowd. You're letting a student suffocate. Get out of my way or I'm moving you. I don't think so. Gladwell's voice had this edge to it now, desperate and defensive at the same time. You have no medical training and no authority here. If you interfere with my treatment of a patient, I'll file a complaint with the district. While they argued, I was losing the fight to stay conscious. The black spots weren't spots anymore, they were taking over everything. My chest had stopped moving. I couldn't make my lungs work. There was no air getting through. It was like drowning in the middle of a room full of people. Quiet, peaceful almost. Just darkness pulling me down. Then I heard the click of the cabinet lock opening. Gladwell shouting, no, stop, you can't. The sound of something falling and shattering. Glass. Then footsteps running toward me. Mr. Kapoor's face appeared above mine, his hand shaking as he pulled an orange and clear tube from its case. The EpiPen. He pulled off the blue safety cap, and I felt him press it hard against my thigh. The click of the mechanism. The weird pressure of medication flooding into my muscle. Then nothing changed. I was still drowning. Still dying. It didn't work, someone cried. Oh God, it's not working. Give it 30 seconds, Mr. Kapoor said, but his voice was shaking. Come on, Caleb. Come on. I felt him tilt my head back, checking my airway. He started compressions on my chest. Someone started counting. 1, 2, 3, 4. Nadia was crying. The sound of sirens in the distance, getting louder. How long had they been coming? Who had called them? Not Gladwell. 15, 16, 17, 18. The counting continued. Mr. Kapoor's hands pressing down on my sternum. Then finally, blessedly, my chest spasmed and I sucked in air. Not much. Just a little. But it was something. Another breath. Smaller. My throat was still mostly closed, but the epinephrine was starting to work. Slowly. Too slowly. He's breathing, Mr. Kapoor announced. Someone call for the paramedics to hurry. The sirens were right outside now. I heard boots running down the hallway. Radio chatter. Professional voices taking over. Paramedics in navy blue uniforms dropping to their knees next to me. BP 70/40. Pulse thready. Airway severely compromised. They're gonna tube him. Get me a pediatric 7.0. A mask over my face. Oxygen. Glorious oxygen. Still couldn't get much through my swollen airway, but it was something. I felt them cut my jeans, exposing my thigh for another injection. Second dose of epi going in. They lifted me onto a gurney. My body was dead weight. I couldn't help them at all. As they wheeled me toward the door, I saw Gladwell pressed against the wall, her face white as paper. Students were still filming, their phones following her every move. Mr. Kapoor was saying something to her, his voice low and furious. I couldn't hear the words over the radio chatter and the oxygen hissing through my mask. The hallway was packed with students, all of them backed against the lockers to let us through. I saw Nadia's face in the crowd, tears streaming down her cheeks. The paramedics were moving fast now, jogging toward the exit. I'm going to intubate in the ambulance, one of them said. His airway's still too narrow. We're losing him again. Everything got jumbled after that. The bright sun after the dim hallway. The ambulance doors slamming shut. A paramedic's face above mine, his hands working fast. You're going to feel some pressure. Try not to fight it. Something hard pushing into my mouth, down my throat. I gagged. Tried to pull away, hands holding my head still. We're in. Bag him. The paramedic squeezed a blue bag attached to the tube now going down my throat. Air pushed into my lungs mechanically. Once. Twice. 3 times. The relief was incredible even though it felt wrong having something breathe for me. The ambulance lurched forward, sirens wailing. "How far to the hospital?" the paramedic asked. 7 minutes, the driver called back. He might not have 7 minutes. Push another epi and start methylprednisolone. Starting a second IV line. More pinches. More medication flooding my system. The paramedic kept squeezing that blue bag, kept forcing air into my lungs. His face was tense, focused. "Stay with me, kid. You're doing great. Just a few more minutes." But I wasn't doing anything. He was doing all the work, keeping me alive through sheer determination and medical training. My job was just not dying, and even that felt like too much. The ambulance took a sharp turn and equipment rattled. "We're 2 minutes out," the driver called. "I need trauma surgery standing by. This kid's in bad shape." We rolled into the emergency bay. The doors flew open. Bright hospital lights. People in scrubs running alongside the gurney. 17-year-old male, severe anaphylaxis to tree nuts. 2 doses of epi, intubated in the field. BP's dropping. Get him to trauma too. Doctors and nurses swarmed. So many hands touching me, pulling at my clothes, sticking more needles in my arms. Voices calling out numbers that meant nothing to me. Someone cut off my shirt. Cold air on my chest. EKG leads stuck to my skin. The breathing tube stayed in place, that paramedic still squeezing the bag. "We need to get control of this airway. His trachea is almost completely closed. Somebody call anesthesia. We need an emergency crit kit standing by. More medication." Someone said something about my blood pressure crashing. I felt hands pressing on my chest again. A doctor's face appeared above mine. "Caleb, I'm Dr. Williamson. We're taking care of you. You're going to be okay." But her eyes told a different story. I'd seen that look before when my grandfather was in the hospital right before he died. That look that said we're doing everything we can, but it might not be enough. The room tilted. Sounds got muffled and distant. He's coding. Start compressions. Charging paddles to 200. Someone was pressing down on my chest again. Hard. Rhythmic. I could feel my ribs flexing under the pressure. Clear. A jolt of electricity. My body arced off the table. Nothing. Again. Clear. Another jolt. Still nothing. Push another epi. "Come on, kid. Don't do this." More compressions. More electricity. I was somewhere above my body now, watching them work. Watching my chest rise and fall artificially as they tried to restart my heart. This is weird, I thought. Shouldn't I be scared? But I wasn't. Just curious. Detached. Then I heard my mother's voice from somewhere far away. "Caleb, my baby, come, back." And I felt myself pulled back down, back into that body on the table, back into the pain and the fear and the desperate need for air. Pulse. We got a pulse. Everyone stop. The compression stopped. I could hear the monitor beeping steadily now. The doctor's hands on my face, checking my pupils with a light. "He's back. Get him to ICU immediately. I need continuous monitoring and respiratory therapy standing by." They wheeled me down a hallway, through double doors, into a room with even more machines. My mother was there suddenly, her hand grabbing mine. Her face was puffy from crying. "Caleb, baby, I'm here. You're okay. You're going to be okay." But I didn't feel okay. I felt like I'd been hit by a truck and then put through a wood chipper. Every part of me hurt. The tube down my throat hurt. The needle in my arm hurt. My chest hurt where they'd been doing compressions. My thigh hurt where they'd injected the epinephrine. Everything hurt. And I couldn't even tell her that because I couldn't talk with the tube in. A doctor came in and explained to my mom that they needed to keep the breathing tube in until the swelling in my airway went down. Could be a few hours. Could be longer. They'd keep me sedated so I wouldn't fight it. My mom nodded, squeezing my hand tighter. The last thing I remember before the sedation took over was her face above mine, tears falling onto my cheeks, her lips moving in what might have been a prayer. I woke up 3 days later in a hospital bed with no tube in my throat, but an oxygen mask over my face. My mom was asleep in a chair next to me, her hand still holding mine. A nurse I didn't recognize was checking the IV bags hanging above my bed. She saw my eyes open and smiled. "Welcome back. You gave us quite a scare." I tried to talk, but my throat felt like I'd swallowed broken glass. The nurse held up her hand. "Don't try to speak yet. Your throat needs time to heal. The tube did some damage on the way out." She pressed a button, and the head of my bed rose slowly. "Your mom hasn't left this room in 3 days. You tried to make her go home, but she wouldn't budge." I squeezed my mom's hand and she jerked awake. Her eyes went wide when she saw me looking at her. "Oh, thank God. Thank God." She leaned over and pressed her forehead against mine. "I thought I lost you. I thought I'd lost my baby." She started crying again, these big heaving sobs that made her whole body shake. The nurse quietly left the room, giving us privacy. When Mom finally pulled herself together, she started telling me everything that had happened. How Mr. Kapoor had broken open the medical cabinet after Gladwell refused to give me the EpiPen. How Gladwell tried to stop him, actually tried to wrestle the EpiPen out of his hands. How students had filmed everything on their phones. How those videos had gone viral within hours. Millions of views of a school nurse refusing to treat a student having an allergic reaction. The school district had placed Gladwell on immediate administrative leave pending investigation. Mr. Kapoor was being called a hero, though he'd also been suspended for breaking school property and taking unauthorized action. The principal was claiming ignorance, saying she had no idea Gladwell was refusing to administer emergency medication. But students were coming forward with stories about other times Gladwell had dismissed their medical concerns or accused them of faking. Mom pulled out her phone and showed me some of the videos. I watched myself collapse on the nurse's office floor, watched Gladwell stand over me saying I was having an anxiety attack, watched her refuse to let Nadia call 911, watched her try to stop Mr. Kapoor from getting my EpiPen, watched her block the door while I literally died on her floor. The videos had millions of views. Comments were brutal. People calling for her to be arrested, fired, prosecuted. Medical professionals weighing in about how this was gross negligence, how she'd violated every principle of nursing ethics. The videos were impossible to watch, but I couldn't look away. That was me on the floor. That was how close I'd come to dying, because someone decided my documented medical emergency wasn't worth treating. The door opened, and a doctor came in, the same one who'd been there when I coded, Dr. Williamson. She had my chart and spent 20 minutes explaining what had happened to my body. The anaphylaxis had caused my airways to swell almost completely shut. My blood pressure had dropped to dangerous levels. My heart had stopped twice, once in the ER and once during intubation. They'd had to perform CPR for a total of 4 minutes before getting me stable. The delay in receiving epinephrine had made everything worse. In a normal allergic reaction, the EpiPen stops the cascade of symptoms before they become life-threatening. But I'd gone nearly 10 minutes without treatment while Gladwell insisted I was faking. Those 10 minutes had almost killed me. The doctor used phrases like severe anaphylaxis, cardiac arrest, and hypoxic brain injury. That last one made my mom gasp. Brain injury? Dr. Williamson explained that when my heart stopped, my brain had been deprived of oxygen. They'd done scans and everything looked okay, but I'd need to be monitored for cognitive or neurological issues over the next few months. Memory problems, difficulty concentrating, mood changes, any of those could be signs of damage. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw something, but I couldn't do either because my throat hurt too much and my body felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. The next few days blurred together. More doctors, more tests, a therapist who asked if I wanted to talk about what happened. I didn't. A social worker who explained that the school district was conducting an investigation and I'd need to give a statement when I was feeling better. Representatives from the state nursing board who took detailed notes about every aspect of Gladwell's refusal to treat me. My room filled with flowers and balloons from classmates. Nadia came every day, her eyes red from crying. She kept apologizing for bringing the brownies, for not checking with my mom about the recipe, for not knowing about the walnuts. I tried to tell her it wasn't her fault, but my throat hurt too much to talk. I wrote on a whiteboard instead. Not your fault. Gladwell's fault. But Nadia couldn't forgive herself. She'd stopped eating. Her mom told mine. Couldn't sleep. Kept having nightmares about watching me die. The guilt was eating her alive even though she'd done nothing wrong except bring brownies to school. Mr. Kapoor visited on day 5. He looked exhausted. Dark circles under his eyes. He pulled up a chair next to my bed and sat down heavily. How are you feeling? I gave him a thumbs up even though it was a lie. He nodded. The school board is trying to fire me for breaking the medical cabinet. My union's fighting it, but it's not looking good. Mom's face went red. They're firing you? You saved his life. He shrugged. I broke school property, administered medication without authorization, interfered with the school nurse's medical judgment. All terminable offenses according to my contract. That's insane. Mom was on her feet now. You saved him. Gladwell was letting him die. I know that. You know that. But the district is more worried about liability than doing the right thing. If they admit I did the right thing by breaking into that cabinet, they're admitting Gladwell did the wrong thing by keeping it locked. That opens them up to lawsuits. So instead, they're making me the bad guy. He looked at me. I don't regret it though. Not for 1 second. I'd do it again in a heartbeat. I wrote on my whiteboard. Thank you for saving my life. He read it, and his eyes got shiny. You're welcome, kid. Just get better, okay? That's all the thanks I need. The hospital discharged me after a week with a stack of prescriptions and follow-up appointments. My throat was still raw but healing. The swelling in my face had finally gone down. I didn't recognize myself in the mirror. I looked like I'd aged 5 years in 7 days. Hollow cheeks, dark circles, a haunted look in my eyes that hadn't been there before. We drove home in silence. My mom kept glancing at me like I might stop breathing again any second. When we pulled into our driveway, I saw something taped to our front door. A note. Mom got out and grabbed it, her face darkening as she read. She crumpled it up, but I made her show me. It said I was a liar trying to ruin a good nurse's career, that everyone knew I'd faked the reaction for attention, that my family should be ashamed of ourselves. No signature, just hate in block letters. Mom wanted to call the police, but I shook my head. What were they going to do? Find whoever left an anonymous note? It didn't matter anyway. The internet had already chosen sides. Half the people thought I was a victim, the other half thought I was a liar. Video evidence didn't matter to that second group. They'd found reasons to doubt. Maybe I was allergic but exaggerating the symptoms. Maybe I had anxiety and couldn't tell the difference. Maybe the swelling wasn't that bad, and the videos were edited to look worse. Maybe Gladwell was right, and Mr. Kapoor overreacted. The mental gymnastics were impressive. Inside our house, Mom made me soup I couldn't eat because swallowing hurt too much. She blended it into basically liquid, and I managed a few sips. My phone had 847 unread messages. I scrolled through them. Most were supportive. Some weren't. Someone had gotten my number and sent me a message saying I should be grateful Gladwell didn't call my parents to come get my dramatic ass sooner. Another said kids like me were why schools couldn't trust students anymore. I blocked the numbers and turned off my phone. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I was back on that floor, unable to breathe, watching Gladwell refuse to help. I could feel my throat closing again, feel the panic, the darkness. I sat up gasping at 3 a.m., clawing at my neck even though there was nothing there. Mom heard me and came running, found me on the floor of my room hyperventilating. She held me while I cried, rocking me like I was a little kid again. The nightmares didn't stop. They got worse. A week after I got home, the school district released a statement. They called what happened to me an unfortunate incident that resulted from miscommunication between staff members. They said Nurse Gladwell had been operating under outdated protocols and would be receiving additional training. They announced Mr. Kapoor's suspension with pay, pending the outcome of his disciplinary hearing. The statement never once used the word negligence, never admitted that Gladwell had refused to treat me. Just vague language about communication breakdowns and protocol updates. My mom read the statement 3 times, getting angrier each time. They're covering their asses. That's all this is. Our lawyer, a woman named Patricia Keene, who specialized in medical malpractice, had already warned us this would happen. School districts always protected themselves first. We'd filed a formal complaint with the state nursing board and were preparing a civil lawsuit. The board investigation alone could take months. The lawsuit could take years. In the meantime, I had to go back to school and pretend everything was fine. My first day back was 3 weeks after the incident. Mom wanted to drive me, but I took the bus, trying to reclaim some normalcy. Every kid on that bus stared at me. Some of them looked sympathetic. Others looked curious, like I was a zoo animal. One kid loudly said to his friend that I was probably faking the whole thing for attention. I spent the ride staring out the window, my backpack clutched tight against my chest. The school had assigned me to a new homeroom away from the main building where the nurse's office was. They'd also given me a new schedule that didn't require me to walk past that hallway. Accommodations, they called it. Avoidance, I called it. My first class was English with Mrs. Paulson. She greeted me at the door with this overly bright smile. So glad to have you back, Caleb. If you need anything at all, just let me know. She'd emphasized anything like I was fragile. Maybe I was. Nadia was in that class. She sat in the back corner and wouldn't look at me. I tried to catch her eye, but she kept her head down, her hair falling forward to hide her face. After class, I went to her locker. She was shoving books inside like they'd personally offended her. Nadia. She flinched. Didn't turn around. I can't talk to you. Her voice was small. Broken. Why not? My parents. They said I'm not allowed to be around you anymore. They're scared we'll get sued or something. They think if I stay away, it proves I didn't do anything wrong. I felt like I'd been punched. You didn't do anything wrong. Tell that to the lawyers. She slammed her locker and walked away without looking back. I stood there feeling more alone than I had on that nurse's office floor. At least then I'd had people trying to help me. Now everyone was scattered, protecting themselves, leaving me isolated in the aftermath of my own near death. Lunch was worse. I sat by myself at a table in the corner. Kids walked past, whispering. Some took pictures. I heard my name followed by laughs. The brownie incident had become school legend. Some versions painted me as the victim. Others painted me as the villain who'd gotten a good nurse fired and a good teacher suspended. Didn't matter that neither had happened yet. Gossip didn't need facts. I ate my lunch alone, my new EpiPen sitting on the table next to my tray. Visible. A reminder to everyone, including myself, that this was real. That I'd really almost died. That it could happen again any time. My throat was still healing but functional. I could swallow solid food again, though it hurt. I could talk, though my voice sounded rough and damaged. The doctor said it might always sound this way now. The intubation tube had scraped my vocal cords. Small price to pay for being alive, she'd said. Easy to say when it wasn't your voice. After school, I had to go to the nurse's office for a medication check. New policy after the incident. Any student with an EpiPen had to check in weekly with the nurse. Different nurse now. Gladwell was still on leave. The new nurse was young, maybe late 20s, and she looked terrified when I walked in. She kept apologizing even though she hadn't done anything. Must be hard being the nurse who replaced the nurse who almost killed someone. She verified my EpiPen was in the cabinet, checked the expiration date, confirmed my emergency contacts were current. The whole time her hands shook. When I left, I heard her on the phone with someone, her voice wavering. I don't know if I can do this job. The whole school hates nurses now. Everyone thinks we're all like Gladwell. That night, Mom showed me the lawyer's preliminary report. They'd gathered statements from over 30 students who'd had bad experiences with Gladwell. Kids she'd sent back to class with sprains that turned out to be fractures. A girl with appendicitis who Gladwell said had gas. A boy with a concussion who Gladwell accused of faking to get out of a test. Pattern of behavior, the lawyers called it. Evidence that my case wasn't isolated but part of how Gladwell operated. She didn't believe kids. Thought they were all faking. Had decided somewhere along the way that her job was to catch liars rather than treat patients. The school board hearing about Mr. Kapoor happened in November. The room was packed. Students, parents, teachers, reporters. Everyone wanted to see if they'd really fire the man who'd saved my life. I sat in the front row with my mom, my new lawyer, and Nadia's parents, who'd finally agreed she could come support me. Mr. Kapoor sat at a table in front with his union rep and his own lawyer. He looked calm, resigned maybe, like he'd already accepted whatever was coming. The board presented their case. He'd broken school property worth $200 to access the medical cabinet. He'd administered medication without authorization from the school nurse. He'd interfered with Gladwell's medical judgment. He'd created liability for the district. Terminable offenses, all of them. His lawyer stood up. Her name was Michelle Rao, and she did not mess around. She played the videos of me dying on Gladwell's floor, played them loud enough that everyone in the room could hear Gladwell saying I was faking, could hear her refusing to call 911, could hear me wheezing and choking, could hear students begging her to help. When the videos ended, the room was silent. Ms. Rao spoke into that silence. Mr. Kapoor broke a cabinet because a child was dying, and the person responsible for saving that child refused to act. He administered medication that was prescribed for that specific child, for that specific emergency. He interfered with judgment that was killing a student. She paused. Let that sink in. A student was dying. The school nurse refused to treat him. And you want to fire the teacher who saved his life? One board member, a woman named Claire Hoffman, spoke up. What if Mr. Kapoor had been wrong? What if it hadn't been anaphylaxis? What if he'd given epinephrine to a child who didn't need it and caused harm? Ms. Rao pulled out a thick folder. This is Caleb Fisher's medical file. Documented tree nut allergy since age 6. 2 previous reactions requiring emergency room treatment. EpiPen prescribed by board-certified allergist. Emergency action plan on file with the school. She spread papers across the table. Mr. Kapoor didn't guess. He didn't make a rash decision. He saw documented symptoms of documented allergy and administered documented treatment after the school nurse refused to do her job. She turned to face the board. Directly. If you fire Mr. Kapoor for saving a child's life, you're telling every teacher in this district that following protocol matters more than saving students. You're saying liability concerns trump basic human decency. Is that really the message you want to send? The board went into closed session for an hour. When they came back, they announced Mr. Kapoor would be suspended without pay for the remainder of the semester, but not terminated. He'd be required to complete additional training on proper channels for emergency situations. He'd be on probation for 2 years. Any further violations would result in immediate termination. It wasn't justice, but it was better than firing. Mr. Kapoor stood up and shook his lawyer's hand. He looked at me across the room and nodded once. I nodded back. We both knew he'd gotten screwed, but at least he still had a job. That was more than we'd expected. Gladwell's hearing was scheduled for January. The nursing board moved slower than the school board. In the meantime, she was still on paid leave, collecting her full salary while doing nothing. The unfairness burned in my chest. She'd nearly killed me and was getting paid vacation. Mr. Kapoor had saved me and lost half a semester's salary. Mom filed the civil lawsuit in December. The district immediately filed a motion to dismiss, claiming governmental immunity. Our lawyers filed a response arguing that immunity didn't apply to gross negligence. The legal back and forth would take months to resolve before we even got to discovery. Patricia told us to be patient. Justice was slow, real slow when school districts were involved. During winter break, I started having panic attacks. Random triggers would set them off. The smell of brownies, someone mentioning nuts, seeing a school nurse in a TV show. My throat would close up even though nothing was wrong. I'd start hyperventilating, clawing at my neck, convinced I was dying again. Mom took me to a therapist who specialized in trauma, Dr. Eleanor Marsh. She explained that what I'd experienced was traumatic, and my body hadn't processed it yet. The panic attacks were my nervous system trying to protect me from a threat that wasn't there anymore. We started EMDR therapy, strange process where I had to think about the trauma while following her finger with my eyes. Supposed to help my brain reprocess the memories. Felt like voodoo, but after a few sessions the panic attacks got less frequent. Still happened, but I could sometimes talk myself down before they spiraled completely out of control. School started again in January, and everything felt different. Mr. Kapoor was back teaching, but quieter now, more careful. He didn't break up student arguments anymore or intervene when he saw kids in distress. He'd learned his lesson about sticking his neck out. Several teachers told me privately they agreed with what he'd done, but would never do it themselves. Too risky. Not worth losing their jobs over. The message was clear. I was on my own if something happened again. The new nurse, whose name was Grace Patterson, was jumpy and anxious every time I came in for my weekly check. She'd verify my EpiPen 3 times like she didn't trust her own eyes. She'd ask me repeatedly if I felt okay, if I was having any symptoms, if I needed anything. I appreciated her thoroughness, but it was exhausting being treated like a bomb that might explode any second. Gladwell's nursing board hearing finally happened in late January. The room was smaller than the school board hearing, but more intense. These weren't elected officials worried about public opinion. These were medical professionals judging one of their own. The board had 3 nurses and 2 doctors. They'd reviewed all the evidence before the hearing started. Videos, medical records, witness statements, everything. Gladwell sat at a table with her lawyer, a man in an expensive suit who kept objecting to everything. The board chair, a stern-looking woman named Dr. Rashmi Venkatesan, was not having it. She cut him off repeatedly. This isn't a criminal trial, counselor. This is a professional licensing review. Your client's nursing license is what's at stake here. The board played the videos. Gladwell watched herself refuse to treat me. watched herself accuse me of faking while I turned blue on her floor. Her face stayed blank. No emotion. No remorse. Just this flat expression like she was watching something that had happened to someone else. When the videos ended, Dr. Venkatesan asked Gladwell directly, "Ms. Gladwell, in your professional opinion, what was wrong with Caleb Fisher that day?" Gladwell straightened in her chair. Anxiety attack. Classic presentation. Rapid breathing. Flushed face. Perceived throat tightness. All consistent with panic disorder. Dr. Venkatesan stared at her. He turned blue. His lips were cyanotic. His airway was closing. He had documented anaphylaxis to tree nuts and had just consumed tree nuts. How is that consistent with anxiety? Gladwell's lawyer jumped in. My client made a judgment call based on her 12 years of experience. Sometimes allergies present atypically. She was concerned about giving unnecessary epinephrine, which carries its own risks. Dr. Venkatesan cut him off. The risks of unnecessary epinephrine are minimal compared to the risks of untreated anaphylaxis, which are death. Your client chose to let a child suffocate rather than administer a prescribed medication that might have been unnecessary. That's not a judgment call. That's negligence. The hearing lasted 4 hours. They called me to testify. I sat in a chair facing the board and told them everything I remembered. The tingling in my mouth, the swelling, the wheezing, collapsing on the floor, watching Gladwell refuse to help while I died. When I finished, one of the board members, a nurse named Michael Torres, asked me a question. "Caleb, did you ever think Nurse Gladwell would let you die?" I thought about it, tried to be fair, even though I hated her. No, I thought she'd eventually help. I thought she'd realize I was really sick and do something. I didn't think anyone would actually just stand there and watch me die. But she did. Michael Torres wrote something down. "Thank you for your honesty." The board deliberated for 3 hours. When they came back, Dr. Venkatesan read their decision. Based on the evidence presented, this board finds that Lindsay Gladwell violated multiple standards of nursing practice. She failed to assess and treat a patient in obvious medical distress. She refused to administer prescribed emergency medication. She prevented others from accessing emergency services. She showed a pattern of dismissing student medical concerns as attention-seeking behavior. She paused. Effective immediately, Ms. Gladwell's nursing license is revoked. She may not practice nursing in this state. She may reapply for licensure after 5 years, pending completion of additional education and demonstration of competency. This decision will be reported to the National Nursing Database. Gladwell's face went white. Her lawyer started arguing, but Dr. Venkatesan banged her gavel. "This hearing is concluded." Gladwell stood up slowly. She looked at me across the room. For the first time, I saw something in her eyes. Not remorse, not apology, anger. Like this was somehow my fault. Like I'd ruined her career instead of her nearly killing me. She turned and walked out without another word. Mom hugged me tight. "It's over. It's finally over." But it wasn't over. Not really. The civil lawsuit was still pending. The school district was still fighting it. Mr. Kapoor was still on probation. Nadia still wouldn't talk to me. I still had panic attacks. I still had nightmares. Gladwell had lost her license, but that didn't undo what she'd done. Didn't give me back the person I'd been before I ate that brownie. The school board held a special meeting in February to address what they called systemic failures in emergency response protocols. They announced new rules. Teachers could break protocol for life-threatening emergencies. All staff would get first aid training. Multiple people would have keys to medical cabinets. EpiPens would be stored in unlocked quick access boxes in every building. All changes that would have saved my life if they'd existed 6 months earlier. Better late than never, I guess. But it felt hollow, like they were fixing the barn after the horse had already died. Except the horse hadn't died. I'd survived. And now I got to live with being the kid who almost died because the school nurse thought he was faking. The lawsuit settled in March. The district agreed to pay all my medical bills, past and future. They agreed to establish a $500,000 fund for other students harmed by inadequate medical care. They agreed to implement all the new safety protocols. They agreed to expunge Mr. Kapoor's discipline record. They did not admit wrongdoing. They did not apologize. They did not say they were sorry I died on their watch. Just money and policy changes and legal language that protected them from liability. Mom wanted to fight for more, but our lawyers said this was a good settlement. Better than we'd get at trial where a jury might decide I'd overreacted or that Gladwell had made an honest mistake. Take the win, they said. So we did. I used some of the settlement money to send flowers to Mr. Kapoor with a note that said thank you for not following protocol. He sent back a card that said some rules are meant to be broken. Nadia finally talked to me in April. Her parents' lawyers had decided there was no liability risk anymore now that the lawsuit was settled. She apologized for avoiding me, said she couldn't sleep knowing I'd almost died from something she'd given me. I told her again it wasn't her fault. Gladwell's fault. The school's fault. But not hers. We started sitting together at lunch again. She never brought brownies, though. Never brought any homemade food. Only stuff in sealed packages where we could read every ingredient. Some wounds don't heal completely. Graduation came in June. I walked across that stage and got my diploma from a principal who'd tried to cover up how close I came to dying in his school. He shook my hand and smiled for the cameras. I smiled back, even though I wanted to punch him. Mr. Kapoor was there in his teacher robes. We made eye contact as I walked past. He nodded. I nodded back. Both of us survivors of an educational system that valued rules over lives. Gladwell wasn't there, obviously. Last I heard, she'd moved 3 states away and was working retail. Couldn't be a nurse anymore. Couldn't be trusted with people's lives. Good. That summer I worked at a camp for kids with food allergies. Kids who understood what it felt like to be afraid of eating. Who carried EpiPens everywhere. Who'd learned not to trust that adults would take their allergies seriously. I taught them how to read labels. How to advocate for themselves. How to not let anyone tell them they were overreacting when their throat started to close. On my last day at camp, one of the kids, a 10-year-old girl named Lily, asked me what happens if the nurse won't help you. I crouched down to her level. You don't wait for permission. You save yourself. You grab that EpiPen and you use it. You call 911 yourself. You make noise until someone helps. You don't ever let someone else decide if you're sick enough to deserve treatment. She nodded seriously. Then she hugged me and whispered that she was glad I didn't die. Me too, kid. Me too. I started college in the fall with a medical alert bracelet that said, Tree nut allergy, carries EpiPen. I registered with Student Disability Services. Met with dining hall staff about my allergy. Made sure every professor knew I might need to leave class suddenly if I had a reaction. I was done trusting that other people would take care of me. If I'd learned anything from almost dying, it was that you have to be your own advocate. You have to fight for yourself, because nobody else will. Sometimes I still think about that day in the cafeteria, biting into that brownie, feeling my throat close, the fear, the helplessness, watching Gladwell refuse to help while I suffocated on her floor, dying for 38 seconds on an operating table. But then I think about Mr. Kapoor breaking down that cabinet door, about the paramedics breathing for me when I couldn't, about Dr. Williamson restarting my heart, about all the people who fought to save me even when the system said not to. And I remember that surviving means something, means I get to tell this story, means other kids might read it and know they're not alone, might know to fight for themselves when adults fail them, might know that sometimes the person who's supposed to help you is the one who almost kills you. And when that happens, you don't give up. You fight. You survive. You make sure everyone knows what really happened. That's what the 22 of us did. We made sure everyone knew. The videos went viral. The investigation happened. The lawsuit settled. The rules changed. Not perfect. Not justice, really. But something. Better than nothing. Better than silence. So yeah, that's when my school nurse became my worst enemy. If you're still here, you're a true fan of these stories. Show some support with a like and subscribe to catch the next one.